If it's Friday, 4 days to the midterms, and President Biden is in California, and then he'll hit the campaign trail in the battleground states of Illinois and New York. That's right. This shows you how Democrats are now in damage control mode in the final weekend, hoping for some surprises when it comes to which way the wind appears to be blowing between now and election night. Plus, the White House clings to some hopeful economic news in today's jobs report, even amid increasing economic anxiety from voters. We're going to speak with a top White House economic advisor later in the show. And finally, Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul, is released from the hospital after that violent attack. As new polling shows, nearly 90% of Americans now fear an increase in political violence across the country. Happy Friday and welcome to Meet the Press. Now I'm Chuck Todd. So, 96 hours out from Election Day, where do things stand? Well, the conventional wisdom can be summed up in one phrase: Republican wave watch. Democrats right now are acting like they're in serious damage control mode, while Republicans are exuding confidence. Case in point, White House announced this afternoon that President Biden is heading to the reliably blue county of Westchester in New York State this weekend after being in San Diego today. The president isn't just going to blue states, he's going to the blue parts of the blue states in these final days. And it's not just about where he's going, it's also about where he's not going. Like some of the key battleground states where all the action is, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, for instance, where he does not appear to be a welcome guest for many candidates. All of this comes as New York's gubernatorial race has suddenly gotten too close for comfort for Democrats. Vice President Harris, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, stumped in New York yesterday for New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Bill Clinton's going to be helping on Sunday. Joe Biden's also doing this. The leader of the House Democrats campaign arm, the guy tasked with getting Democrats elected to the House, New York Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, he's in his own fight for his political life. Meanwhile, like I said, Republicans are feeling pretty confident right now. Here's Florida Senator Rick Scott. He runs the Republican Senate campaign arm. He's pretty much already spiking the football on Republican-controlled Senate.
Right now, I think we're at 52 plus. Amendment's going to win. Herschel's going to win. Adam Laxalt's going to win. I think we have a real good shot out in Arizona, a real good shot in New Hampshire. We're basically tied in Washington. So it just depends on who votes.
So you're predicting control?
Absolutely.
What's fascinating is that he puts Pennsylvania ahead of Arizona in New Hampshire. He's kind of alone on that score for what it's worth. But folks, conventional wisdom can and has been wrong before. And we should throw this caveat out there. Just look at the last three national elections. 2016, Donald Trump defied the conventional wisdom, and he defeated Hillary Clinton. Trust me, Republicans, on the day of the election, were in here quietly claiming, oh, she's going to get 350 electoral votes. 2018, Democrats did flip the House, but it wasn't a wave. As, guess what? After the House, they lost seats in the Senate, and they didn't win gubernatorial races in battleground states like Arizona, Georgia, and Florida. And in 2020, the conventional wisdom of the Democrats were going to do well across the board, pick up a bunch of House seats and win the Senate without runoffs. But they actually lost seats in the House. And we all know how the Senate broke down. It took Georgia runoffs and a Donald Trump debacle for that to happen. But in all three of those instances, the conventional wisdom in the weekend before was overstating Democratic support. And that begs this question of whether folks are now either overcorrecting and underestimating Democratic turnout, or we're underestimating Republican turnout again, and this is a tsunami. Obviously, we know what Democrats are hoping is the answer. But what if their party's much maligned messaging turns out to be more effective than pundits think? What if the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe does fuel a big turnout? What if expectations of a wave are off because of all the unknowns this cycle and how and when people are going to vote? All of this is an unknown because this is the first major nationwide election since the height of the pandemic and since Donald Trump left office. Bottom line, we are still dealing with some pretty big wild cards with 4 days to go. And the tea leaves may say a certain thing, but be careful. That said, we are starting our show on Wave Watch today. It's Steve Patterson. He's in Seattle as Republicans try to unseat the longtime Washington Democratic Senator Patty Murray. Allie Raffa's in San Diego, where we saw President Biden on the stump last night and today. Dasha Burns is in the state where just about every Republican and Democratic heavyweight are headed to this weekend in Pennsylvania. But, Steve, I'm going to start with you in the upper Northwest. This is not where we expected to have somebody on the Friday before the election. And the fact that we're here, the fact that Patty Murray is nervous, the fact that Rick Scott talked about Tiffany Smiley essentially being neck and neck. You're up there. What have you learned in the last 24 hours?
Look, there is anxiety on the ground, and it is palpable. I think Democrats are nervous, specifically, you know, Patty Murray's own constituency. They love Patty Murray. I mean, she's been here for 30 years, for so long. And there hasn't been a Republican senator sent from here to Washington, D.C. in 20 years. So this is a big shock. But we have been watching this race, and Tiffany Smiley, there's a lot of energy around that campaign. I think the worry from Democrats who support Murray is that there is a lot of complacency when you look at a person that is essentially an institution in this state. When you've been around that long, the energy level of a barnstorming, upstart, younger, frankly, Republican versus somebody that everybody has seen for years and years and years reminds me of growing up in Michigan, where I had Carl Levin most of my natural life as a senator there. Same sort of scenario here. But also, let's not forget that Smiley has been in front of the national media for a long time. The surprise here is the acceleration of the gap closing. It was 18 points near primary time. That has closed to now, in most polls, within the margin of error. She is barnstorming the state. She is not focused on her base. She is not focused on Murray's base. She's focused on those suburban undecideds that will decide this election in just a few days. And she's been doing a lot of work. I spoke to the senator about what's her response to this. Are you worried? Here's what she told me.
Democracy is on the ballot. I was in Washington, D.C. I was locked in my Capitol office, and the insurrectionists were pounding on my door. And for the first time, I really realized that our democracy could be at risk.
And that's the response. In a place, big issue. Women's rights is a big issue. And democracy, as far as everybody I spoke to, every voter I spoke to, democracy is on the ballot. She thinks that those issues are big enough, that she's been behind those issues long enough that people will come out in support of her. The polling is very tight. There's a lot of money in this state right now. There is a lot of anxiety as well.
Well, the good or bad news for people is this. It's going to take us 3 weeks to get the final vote count in Washington State after Election Day. So we're not going to know the results anytime soon. Steve, terrific reporting in Seattle. Thanks for getting us started. Let me go down the Pacific Coast, if you will, down to Carlsbad, California, where we find Allie Raffa. She's covering the president's travel down there. And frankly, Allie, the fact that the president announced about an hour ago that his Sunday campaign stop was going to be in Westchester County, New York. Obviously, the White House is in damage control mode here, going to blue places to try to save some blue politicians.
Yeah, Chuck, the fact that President Biden is here in Southern California, California in general, historically Democratic strongholds, this district specifically, the 49th district, an easy win for President Biden in 2020 and an easy win for Congressman Mike Levin in 2020. But it's not looking like that is going to be the case in these midterms in a few days. This race now recently changing from lean Democrat to a toss-up. This was a race that Levin won by 6 percentage points in 2020. Part of the reason that's going on is because of the current economic climate, as well as some redistricting that recently took place here that is favoring Republicans. So Democrats know how important this race is, as well as so many other House and Senate races across the country, knowing that in these last few days before the midterms, their strategy to really rally the base and secure the support of the base of supporters they already have, rather than taking the time to change voters' minds, is more beneficial. And that's why you see President Biden out here today at this tech company in Carlsbad, California, touting legislative accomplishments. Democrats talking about the things that they have done. He not only talked about that, he talked about the PACT Act, the burn pit bill that he was a key part in getting passed a few months ago. Obviously, San Diego, the largest military community in the United States. And so that's what we're seeing similarly with other top brass of the Democratic Party across the country over these next few days, as it is really not lost on Democrats how important and how close these races have become, Chuck.
Allie, would you characterize him speaking more on economic issues, or has he been talking about democracy and abortion rights?
We saw him hit on abortion rights and democracy at the rally he held last night in Oceanside. Both of those topics getting a huge reaction from the crowd there. Today, he focused more on veterans' rights, veterans' access to health care, as well as the infrastructure bill that he signed into law a couple months ago, and the CHIPS bill, of course, that he is here at this technology company touting today. But it is not lost on Californians how important the economy is. I can tell you just from driving to this company here this morning, gas prices are nearly $6 a gallon here. So that's definitely something that Biden was trying to stress during this event today.
Well, I guess the one piece of good news is that they're no longer touching 7, which is where things were about a month ago. Anyway, Allie, Raffa on the road traveling with the president for us. Allie, thanks for your reporting. Let me move over to Dasha Burns. And Pennsylvania is used to the last weekend being very busy with heavyweights because really before 2020, Pennsylvania was essentially not an early voting state. Everybody had to vote on Election Day, so all the get-out-the-vote rallies were always packed until the very end. And in many cases, you're seeing the same thing, Dasha. You got Biden, Obama, and Trump are all going to be in the Keystone State in the next 48 hours.
Yeah, exactly right. And perhaps an even bigger name than all three of those, Oprah Winfrey, Chuck, now jumping into the fray here last night, endorsing John Fetterman, which is kind of a blow to Dr. Oz. She's widely credited for helping launch his career. NBC News actually got the first response from the Oz campaign saying that Dr. Oz loves Oprah, respects the fact that they have different politics. He believes we need more balance and less extremism in Washington. So it's interesting seeing the Oz campaign. They've really been focused on words like balance, like moderation, like stability, trying to paint Fetterman as extreme, Oz as moderate. But, Chuck, tomorrow, Oz will be at a rally with former President Trump and Doug Mastriano, the Republican candidate for governor, who Republicans in the state have told me is too extreme for them. So one wonders whether this event on Saturday will be more helpful or potentially harmful to Oz as he's trying to pitch himself in that moderate lane. One glimmer of hope for Democrats, Chuck, the guy that's about to be here at this IBEW Union Hall today, Josh Shapiro, he is leading by such a wide margin in his race that Democrats are hoping he can actually pull up the rest of the ticket. And while he is so far ahead, he is still doing a whole lot of campaigning. He's on a bus tour making tons and tons of stops here, hoping to give that boost to Democrats here, Chuck.
And Dasha, I'm curious, the Fetterman campaign, maybe I'm being cynical here. How long have they been sitting on that Oprah endorsement?
Well, there is some reporting that this has been something that's been worked behind the scenes for quite some time. I mean, we were all waiting to see whether she would come and jump into this race. You'll remember a while back, Oz actually told her, don't jump in here. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want my friends hurt. And you see her coming in now at the 11th hour for Fetterman. It seems to me like that was in the works there for a bit, Chuck.
It's fascinating. Dasha Burns in Pennsylvania. Dasha, thank you. So when it comes to the Senate, there's a bunch of different outcomes we could be looking at when all the votes are counted. And as I said, we may have to wait 3 weeks for the state of Washington. Oh, joy, right, Jessica? Yes. Joining me now, the Cook Political Report Senate editor. She's the governor's editor as well. It's Jessica Taylor. I can't believe you're not in Tennessee Orange, but I will leave that aside. Tomorrow's Tennessee Orange. So we're going to play with our map again today and where we are on our what if. So we'll go, we'll go east to west. We'll start there. Florida.
Republican.
Nope, or Florida, definitely Republican. Georgia, should we just sort of put at the bottom here of the list for a minute?
You know, I still would vote in favor. I still think it's going to probably be a runoff. But like the question I'm hearing from people and even Democrats now is if Brian Kemp's win is big enough, can he pull Walker over that finish line?
That is, I still don't see how the math works to avoid runoff, but we shall see. North Carolina, where are we sitting here?
Republican.
We're going to put it in a Republican county.
Republican.
Fair enough. Pennsylvania. You want to put it here at the bottom here in a minute?
Let's leave it there right now.
We'll put it at the bottom here in a minute. Ohio.
Republican.
All right.
Tim Ryan has run a perfect race. J.D. Vance has run a terrible race.
Under 5 points.
I think he'll be under 5 points.
That's going to be a recrimination on the Democratic Party. If he's less than 5 points, that's an error on the National Party.
But you could spend millions, and like those last few points are still.
Well, try.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what you don't. You know what you can't do. You can't do it if you don't try.
Yeah.
Iowa. I assume we're moving over here?
Yes, Republican.
All right.
We will get a new survey this weekend from the Des Moines Register again, it looks like.
New Hampshire.
This one is certainly tightened. We are seeing tightening polls. I'm seeing it in Democratic private polling, too. We have left it, though, and lean Democratic. But this is one I'm watching very early on. This is one I'm watching early on election night because it's one of most of the polls in the state close at 7. We should be seeing results there. And, you know, if that race is closer than it is, or if Baldock, despite
Keep talking for me while I fix my map here.
Despite, you know, SLF and different things, super PACs pulling out, that is one that, you know, listen, if it looks like Hassan's in trouble, all of these other races are falling. We're talking about a 53, 54 seat majority.
All right, let's keep our march from east to west here. We put Georgia and Pennsylvania here at the bottom. We're going to wait. How about old Wisconsin? This is a big move you made today.
We did. We moved this to lean Republican. Listen, the polls are still tight there. That's just the nature of Wisconsin. But I think you look at the political environment there, and it's one that at least Republican private polling has shown Barnes pretty comfortably ahead.
Split ticket or no? Do you think these two, the governor's race and Senate race, conform or not?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's. I think they're going to be just so close.
If it's a split ticket, it's like a statistical anomaly.
Yeah, just very, very small. Not big like we're going to see, I think, in Pennsylvania or New Hampshire.
What do I do with Utah?
I still think it's in Republican territory.
Right.
We've left it in likely there. You know, McMullen has certainly run an interesting campaign, but it does feel like the past few weeks they've sounded the alarm for Lee. I think there's enough cover in there for him.
I saw John Huntsman doing direct-to-camera ads there. They couldn't get Mitt Romney, so you get John Huntsman. Colorado, I'm moving over here, right?
Yes.
What's closer, Colorado or Washington State?
I still think Colorado could be. Washington State, you know, we have moved that to likely Democratic. But, you know, the best poll we had really was the one on Election Day in the primary.
Yeah, Murray, was a big gap.
Murray was at 52% already. When you added another Democrat, it was almost up to 54%. So has that moved that much in just a couple of months? Maybe because the environment is soured, but has it soured enough in Washington?
All right. Nevada.
So these four that you have here are all of our toss-up states.
Yes,
these are our toss-up states.
All right.
And Nevada, I've said all along, Catherine Cortez Masto, the most endangered incumbent. You know, our friend John Ralston over there.
The early vote looks disastrous for Democrats. Just disastrous.
Exactly.
Right now, if this is the environment, I would put it here. Now, we could be off on something, but if this is the environment we're looking at now, so that puts them at 50. This means Democrats have to win all three.
Yep.
This isn't impossible, is it?
It is not. And, you know, we changed our range today from, again, the best outcome that I can see, and we're seeing it here.
I was just going to say we just did it,
It's 50-50. That's the sort of Democrats' best case scenario.
It's the best case.
Yes.
And it means runoff, because there's no way Warnock's at 50 this time, right? Is that the least likely outcome?
I believe so at this point. I wouldn't have said that even a couple of months ago. But Walker, really, they have pulled him over the end zone, let's say, which let's not hope University of Georgia is doing a lot tomorrow.
Fair enough. I have struggled with these.
Yes.
Let me ask this. I'm going to leave them here. We're not going to move them because I don't want people to get off. Carrie Lake and Blake Masters, speaking of conforming races,
yes.
I feel like all the statewides are conforming. I feel that way in Nevada. I feel that way in Wisconsin.
Yes.
I feel that way in Arizona. If there's how much can Kelly run ahead of Hobbs?
3 points, but
That's a lot.
Here's the bigger thing I think for Kelly. Biden's numbers, he was earlier a couple of months ago, he was in the 40s there. He's of the lowest of any of the competitive states we have right now. He's in the 30s. That is just really hard, double digits to run ahead of Biden. I had an operative that I trust today tell me that Arizona this year is a +4 Republican state. That doesn't mean it will be in 24 or that it was in 20. Can he run 4 points ahead of Democrats on this? I'm not sure. Yeah. Pennsylvania, how much is Mastriano a drag on us at the end of the day? I mean, he's going to appear with him tomorrow. That's certainly not what he needs. They're going to circulate those pictures and stuff. But it does feel like Oz has a little bit of momentum there. But what it boils down to is they don't like him. You see his favorable ratings are just so far underwater. Will they sort of hold their noses, vote for him to get a Republican Senate, and they can vote against Mastriano? I think if there's a gap, I think it's going to be in Pennsylvania, clearly, between Shapiro. The reality is we've ruined your Thanksgiving. You know, as long as the Georgia runoff means if these two go down, the Georgia runoff's for control. It's deja vu again. And also, I will say, Democrats I have talked to talking about that scenario, they're like, it's bad.
Well, I'm going to give one. There's actually a real piece of college football problem here. The runoff, I believe, is 3 days after
the SEC championship. Oh, yeah. I thought about that.
Oh, yes. I don't think that's an insignificant moment in Georgia politics.
Well, I mean, I don't think Georgia's going to be playing in it, so.
Wow, big words. Big words there. Call it for the Vols upset in Athens on Saturday. Jessica Taylor, a great campaign here. See you Tuesday.
See you Tuesday.
All right.
Thanks.
Up next, it's the last major economic report before Election Day. We're going to dig into the October jobs report with a senior White House economic advisor. And later, all politics is local. We're going to give you the big picture impact on the tiniest races. We will tell you what to watch for in the battle for state legislatures across the country. 9 states have some chambers up for grabs. The results could determine the fate of the 2024 presidency. I'm not kidding. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Voters have been signaling that there is potentially one issue above all else on their minds with 4 days to go. It's the cost of living. And in the final jobs report before the election, the Labor Department reported that the economy did add 261,000 new jobs this month, a number that was a bit higher than expected. The unemployment rate ticked up to 3.7%, meaning more people are actually looking for work. That's a good sign. Jobs report comes 2 days, though, after the Federal Reserve announced its 6th rate hike of the year, as it contends with the highest inflation this country's dealt with in 40 years. And a short time ago, in California, President Biden touted the latest jobs report while acknowledging prices are still too high for most Americans.
Look, folks, I came here because it's an example of one of the bright spots we're seeing across the country, where America is reasserting itself. As simple as that. 10 million new jobs in 20 months. Folks, our economy continues to grow and add jobs, even as gas prices continue to come down. We got a lot more to do. We also know folks are still struggling with inflation. It's our #1 priority.
So with me now is Gene Sperling. He is right now has the title of American Rescue Plan Coordinator. He's a senior advisor to President Biden, but he's been a senior advisor on economics to a lot of Democratic presidents, knows his stuff. Hey, Gene, it's good to see you. Let me just start, though, with,
Thanks, Todd.
With the sort of bizarre nature of how the Fed works. This jobs report's a good jobs report. All that means is the Fed's going to keep raising interest rates and try to engineer a slowdown in this economy. I mean, we seem to be running against each other here. He's trying to slow this economy down, and it doesn't want to slow down, yet we have a worker issue. Isn't that the biggest cause of inflation?
Well, Chuck, what you saw today was a very solid, strong jobs number, not the kind of, record types of 500,000-600,000 that we saw before, but what the president's been pushing for, which is solid job growth, a solid growth overall in the economy, and moderating prices that don't give up all the gains that we've seen. So I think this should be encouraging. We should be encouraged that Americans are working. I just want to give one statistic. In the first 10 months of this year, we've created 4 million jobs. Other than last year, that's the most jobs ever created in the first 10 months of the year ever in U.S. history. Now, when you consider that many Republicans were saying the economy was in recession, clearly having the most jobs ever created in the first 10 months of a year is not consistent with that. And yet we are seeing moderation. We are seeing less jobs opening. So I do think that we are trying to get, and maybe successfully getting to that, whether you call it a soft landing or that period where growth is still solid, where you're still having strong job gains and low unemployment, but you are seeing prices moderating and hopefully can weather the impacts of the higher interest rates that central banks all over the world are doing to deal with global inflation.
I understand it, but I go back to every single economist that you talk to that says, what is it that could actually have an impact on inflation other than raising interest rates? And the #1 thing is increased legal immigration. And I've heard the rhetoric from the White House that says we've done what we can and all that. But I'm sorry, everybody just seems to be standing on ceremony, not dealing with the one thing that elected officials could do to deal with inflation. What's the plan?
Well, Chuck, I agree with you on one thing, and I think we do, which is that we have to deal with the supply side. We have seen prime-age workers come back in the same percentage as they were in 2019, but not overall workers. And obviously, the degree of legal immigration affects that. Probably long COVID does. Probably lack of child care helps so that more second parents can come back to work. All of these are much stronger solutions than just hoping that we put more people out of work. Having greater labor supply. The other area is housing supply. We had 1.5 million less jobs over the last, housing units created over the last 10 years. Yeah. That's affecting housing prices. We're starting to see housing prices moderate. We're starting to see new leases on rent start to come down. Those are all positive signs for the direction of inflation. But things like housing supply and increasing the labor force supply, those, you're absolutely right, should be at the top of our agenda for dealing with higher cost in ways that aren't about putting people out of work.
Look, if I were to interpret all of the polling I've looked at over the last 3 weeks, Gene, and if you were to, it appears the voters believe the president doesn't seem to, that the White House or the president doesn't, and Democrats do not seem to understand that cost of living is the number one issue, that the party didn't come around to this issue soon enough. And frankly, if you thought it was transitory, then, it took, did you guys take too long acknowledging the impact of this on the election?
Well, Chuck, it is clear that not just us, literally the entire global economic forecasting community did not foresee many of the things that were to happen. Delta, Omicron, the unthinkable war of aggression in Ukraine, all of these things had impacts on inflation, and we've seen it globally. And let's just be honest, we never, even when we had the last pandemic in 1918, this was the first time we ever shut down and restarted the economy. So this is a problem being dealt everywhere. But I would take exception with the idea that the president and the White House has not been focused on this all the time. You can remember over a year ago that we were putting together supply chain task force, that we were working with companies like Federal Express and others to make sure that the shelves were stocked for Christmas. And we would be the first to say that even if this is a global problem, it's a very little comfort to a family in the United States going through the grocery line or the gas line. But our message is that who is the one who's actually fighting to lower costs? It's the president that took the actions to do a historic release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that has helped gas prices go down $1.23. It's the president that has taken historic action to lower prescription drug prices, insulin prices, lower health premiums by $800 for families, lower energy costs for people buying new appliances. And on every single one of those measures, it is the Republican agenda to repeal them, which would only increase inflation and take away those cost savings for millions of American families.
Very quickly, Gene, how much confidence do you have in the Fed? Are you at all nervous that we are going to have an orchestrated recession? The housing market looks like it's crashing before our eyes with mortgage rates over 7. Are you worried we're going to hit double digits if we keep this up?
Well, Chuck, this is an issue that's a lot easier for me to talk about when I'm not in the White House because we have such strong respect for the independence of the Federal Reserve that we don't want to be, in a situation where we're criticizing or praising them. But I think the issues that being raised are the issues being discussed everywhere and that were in the Fed statement itself. How much of a lag is there? How much is already in store? I think there are definitely signs already of that inflation will come down. That is what most forecasters see. I think inventories are up. I think there'll be heavy price discounting in the Christmas season. Again, we've seen new leases not having the increases that they've had. So, I think it has been moving in the right direction, but way too slow for families, and we understand that. And even though people are getting raises and working, nobody wants to give back part or all of that raise due to inflation. And, that's what we wake up and focus on every single day.
All right, Gene Sperling, right now senior advisor to President Biden on doling out the American Rescue Plan funds. Sorry, Gene, you and I both get confused by our titles and our names these days. No worries. Good to see you.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it.
Still ahead, we've got new poll numbers on Americans' concerns about the threat of political violence, plus some new NBC reporting on Donald Trump's 2024 plans. Are we really 10 days away from him being an announced candidate for president? You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. With 4 days to go until the 2022 election, Donald Trump is raising the prospect of his own presidential run in 2024. Here's what he told the crowd in Iowa while campaigning for Senator Chuck Grassley and Governor Kim Reynolds.
And now, in order to make our country successful and safe and glorious, I will very, very, very probably do it again, okay? Very, very, very probably. Get ready. That's all I'm telling you very soon. Get ready. Get ready.
So perhaps he was in Iowa for the caucuses. Two sources tell NBC News Trump will likely officially announce he's running for president this month, though the exact date has not been nailed down. There is a report out there of November 14th. Who knows? That's essentially a week from this Monday. Trump, of course, is also at the center of several investigations. And a potential candidacy announcement comes, as the New York Times reporting. Justice Department hopes to reach a decision on possible charges against the former president before the 2024 campaign heats up. But if they don't, perhaps they will have to do a special counsel. Joining me now is the panel for this Friday. NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Kristen Welker, Republican strategist Doug Heye, and Cornell Belcher, Democratic pollster and NBC News political analyst. Let's dispense with Trump very quickly, Kristen.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know.
We've wanted to say that for a while.
I hear you. So everything you hear is he's itching to be more in whatever this is in his mind. Clearly getting out early, because there had been some reports that, like, others were going to jump in this race early, trying to beat Trump to the punch. Perhaps he's heard this.
Absolutely, he's heard this. And I also think, Chuck, obviously we've been talking more and more about how Republicans have momentum heading into next Tuesday. I think he's emboldened by those reports. Look, he teased it himself. He all but walked up to the line of saying, I'm in this race. And so I think that's why you have aides saying they think it's likely this month. But you have to caveat it with the fact that we don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday yet. He's going to be paying very close attention. And everything with the former president comes with a caveat, because, as you know, he likes trial balloons. He likes to throw things out and see what the reception is.
Yeah, Doug, this, I assume, not the closing idea Republicans would want to be dealing with, whether you're Mehmet Oz in Latrobe, Pennsylvania tomorrow, or Chuck Grassley last night.
Yeah, Donald Trump has been largely absent from the campaign trail as an issue. That's been good for Republicans. They can talk about crime and inflation, the border, and things like that. So what's the closing message now? Donald Trump getting what Donald Trump wants the most, attention. And so it distracts at a time when Republicans really need to keep that momentum going.
Cornell, realistically, is it usable for your side?
Well, look, anytime the conversation turns to Donald Trump, it's very usable for Democrats, right? You're talking about someone who has, you talk about job approval of Biden. You know whose numbers are a lot worse than Biden? It's Donald Trump. So the more attention that he can focus on himself, the better it is for Democrats.
Let's stay on Trump, and I want to throw out something that I've had a few Democratic strategists say to me, which is the party in general is too obsessed with Trump, and this campaign has shown it. What say you?
I don't know what that means.
Meaning everything is centered around Trump, the democracy issue, that there's this focus on Trump, that Trump sort of eats at the brains, and it's like taking people's eye off the crime and economy ball.
I don't think he's eating at our brain. I think he's more worried about Donald Trump being on the campaign trail than I think Democrats are worried about Donald Trump being on the campaign trail. But look, Donald Trump is a polarizing, galvanizing figure. Donald Trump is someone who has rallied the Republican base. But in back-to-back elections where Donald Trump's name was on the ballot, Republicans failed to get a majority. And so if he's out in front again, and by the way, I'm going to go on record right now. If the turnout is 50% or better, again, Republicans will not win a majority, at least of the voters now, because of districting. As you know, they can win a less than a majority and still pick up seats.
Kristen, the White House certainly is acting like a bunch of people who think they're going to lose on Tuesday, and they're sitting here trying to reinforce Kathy Hochul. They're going to a lot of blue areas, not going to many swing areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And President Biden was in New Mexico, a state that he won. They're also just defending this strategy, what you just asked Cornell about, because obviously the president had this big democracy speech. Democracy is on the ballot. And they say, look, they're trying to make the closing argument and trying to point out extremism within the Republican Party in all of its forms, that it's not just about this narrow argument, that it pertains to abortion, that it pertains to issues related to the economy. But I think the skepticism and the concern among some Democrats is, first of all, not everyone's singing from the same playbook and songbook. And second of all, the president hasn't exactly been beating this drum in a way that I think people feel has been cohesive throughout the course of the past several weeks.
Doug, there's another thing that seems, this phenomenon of Democrats almost suffering more right now in blue states. They're certainly on the House side. And that the hypotheticals don't work, particularly the hypothetical on an abortion ban. And frankly, you could throw in the hypothetical about losing the democracy. It's certainly a hypothetical if you're focused on it, but the voters, the last remaining voters, they're focused on the grocery bill first. They care about the democracy, but the grocery bill. Is that why, Republicans just focusing on crime, do you think that's going to be what you guys look to and say, that's why we won?
Yeah, look, the campaigns, you learn a lot about this campaign by watching college football. And so watching the North Carolina Pitt game, so 2 Senate races happening last Saturday, nothing but campaign ads. And in North Carolina, Sherry Beasley was largely talking about abortion. Ted Budd was talking about crime. You also have 2 Supreme Court justice races in North Carolina, so crime's a bigger issue there. So they're going to tell you what they want to talk about, but so will voters. And it's why I was surprised by Biden's remarks, just a couple blocks from here. He essentially said in his speech the other night, here's what should be important to you as a voter. When voters are saying, here's what's important to us.
But you can walk and chew gum at the same time.
But you can't afford gum. That's the problem.
Well, this is really interesting to me, because you know who's most concerned about the economy and who's most stressed out about the economy? It's actually the people who are doing best. Are actually a lot of Republican voters. Like, I got a feeling that if we had this many jobs being created, this sort of low unemployment, and this sort of our economy is still growing, and this sort of consumer spending, I got a feeling this 80% of Republicans wouldn't be saying we're in a recession
Chuck,
right now.
I think the question is, does any of this, the president's speech, this buzz about whether former President Trump is going to announce in the next few weeks, does it make a difference? And I've been talking to people on both sides of the aisle who feel as though everything is largely baked in at this point.
I want to focus on crime. I don't know if you've read the Stan Greenberg memo that's been making the rounds over the last 48 hours, but I have an excerpt of it here. This is Bill Clinton's former pollster, and he was saying, he wrote a whole memo about the crime issue for Democrats, and he said, I was asked repeatedly by colleagues and campaigning Democrats, what should we do, what should we be saying on crime when I'm attacked for defunding the police? To be honest, Greenberg writes, Democrats were in such terrible shape on crime at this late point, I said, speak as little as possible or mumble. Nothing they've said up until now was reassuring and helpful. And there was more to it. He basically said Democrats, that the messaging that stuck to the Democrats in 2020 never got fixed. What say you?
Well, first of all, Stan is like the godfather of polling. I once interned at Stan Greenberg.
I think some people wish they could have interned at Stan Greenberg.
But he's right. But here's the thing, Chuck. Republicans have had a huge advantage on crime for the last 2 decades. Like, it's not news that Republicans have a huge advantage on crime, and they drive the crime issue to mobilize and motivate their base. And again, what did Trump end his last election campaign with? If I lose, the suburbs will be burning, right? It's a classic fear tactic. But again, the Democrats are coming again with, a choice between Republicans and Democrats on a number of issues. They're always going to have the advantage on crime.
Well, what was interesting, he said the only thing that would work right now is not just advocating that you support law enforcement, that you want 100,000 new cops on the street.
But Democrats, but some Democrats
have been saying that.
I've tested it, right? We Democrats in Congress have actually.
Is he right that if you say more, if you say, hey, we want to give you money for more law enforcement, that's a winning message?
But you have to inoculate, right? You're not going to win on crime. But how do you inoculate on crime? We've given billions more to law enforcement, and Republicans want to do away with the FBI.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be a victim of crime or even watch the TV ads to know it's out there. All you have to do is go to a drugstore where you have to push a button and somebody will come in and unlock the shampoo or the deodorant for you. So you weren't a part of any kind of stealing, but you see that it happened. And you see this happening where there are videos of people who come in and it's a group of 10 people and half of an aisle goes and it scares you.
It does feel like policies in Portland, Oregon are being hung around the neck of basically every Democrat.
Absolutely. But this is what I think is so fascinating. This is the challenge of Democrats' messaging writ large, because candidate Biden was saying we have to fund the police.
Mm-hmm.
Former President Obama was saying we have to fund the police. And yet, once he got into office, it ceased to continue to break through. And that's our same challenge on the economy.
But it's a it's a scarecrow, right? Democrats aren't taking away funding from law enforcement. They're not, right? It is a false equivalence. And I know we're not about facts, but you know the facts are that crime over the last decade...
No, it's a huge perception problem.
Right.
It's up, and it's very likely. I talked with somebody in law enforcement, Cornell, that said, unfortunately, we're not here yet, but in about 4 years, we're going to say this was all pandemic related. And that is what it's, but we don't, but in fairness, he said nobody can say that for sure.
And tens of millions of dollars in campaign spending, scaring the hell out of American people about
Voters
crime.
vote on feelings, not on data, though. That's the reality.
Well,
that is absolutely correct.
Welcome to American Politics 101. And with that, we will pause this conversation. Terrific panel. Happy Friday. We got you smiling, Cornell. Up next, a belated apology after a belated suspension. The latest on NBC star Kyrie Irving and this chapter of anti-Semitism in America. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. The Brooklyn Nets have suspended star player Kyrie Irving for at least 5 games without pay, following days of backlash after Irving promoted a movie with anti-Semitic tropes. The Nets announced the suspension late yesterday, just after our own interview with the head of the ADL about it, hours after Irving himself refused to apologize or denounce anti-Semitism while speaking to reporters. But the move came nearly a week after Irving first tweeted a link to the 2018 film. Irving has now removed the link from his Twitter account. Then he issued this statement. In the statement announcing the suspension, the Brooklyn Nets stated, "Such failure to disavow anti-Semitism when given a clear opportunity to do so is deeply disturbing, is against the values of our organization, and constitutes conduct detrimental to the team. Accordingly, we are of the view that he is currently unfit to be associated with the Brooklyn Nets." Okay. Well, the suspension will cost Irving at least $1.25 million in lost salary. Well, guess what? Hours after that suspension was announced, Irving finally did issue an apology, posting on Instagram this: "To all Jewish families and communities that are hurt and affected from my post, I'm deeply sorry to have caused you pain, and I apologize. I initially reacted out of emotion to being unjustly labeled anti-Semitic instead of focusing on the healing process of my Jewish brothers and sisters that were hurt from the hateful remarks made in the documentary. I had no intentions to disrespect any Jewish cultural history regarding the Holocaust or perpetuate any hate." The NBA has not reacted to Irving's suspension, but Commissioner Adam Silver did say yesterday he planned on meeting with the Nets star face-to-face in the coming days. ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt, who again was on our show yesterday, called Irving's apology an encouraging step, but also said he needed to do more to undo the damage. And by the way, Mr. Greenblatt would not accept the donation, at least as of yesterday, that Kyrie Irving had pledged to the ADL. We'll see if this apology changes their mind. Turning now to something pretty major happening here at NBC News. We are 2 days from the official 75th anniversary of Meet the Press. That's right, the diamond anniversary. Ahead of our big anniversary, we'll be airing a special episode of Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now, focusing on the show's legacy and its place in history. Here's a sneak peek. Fidel Castro, a guest on Meet the Press, George. And you make the case. Why should American journalists interview dictators?
Because they're there, like Everest.
Yeah.
Sure, I mean, it's fascinating to see. I mean, when Castro came to this country, he gave a lecture at Princeton. Mm-hmm. He held court in a hotel in Harlem. He circulated around Manhattan.
Today, news organizations might get canceled for doing that.
Right. Well, you know, it's funny. I worked with Tim Russert for 17 years, and I remember very often he would be asked, what guests would you ever want to have on Meet the Press? And of course, his top one that he would say he would have loved to go back in time and interview Jesus Christ, of course. But then his next...
That was a big surprise.
Exactly. But then his next one...
I think a lot of us would like to...
Exactly.
There's a lot of things we'd like to ask Jesus about.
But the next person he would say was Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
And he would always say that these cameras here are the best disinfectant.
Yeah.
You put the sunlight on it, and it really hits home.
I've always said my dream guest was Fidel Castro growing up in Miami. That special episode, along with highlights from the archives, like the full episode from 1959, where Fidel Castro appeared during his first visit to the U.S. after the Cuban Revolution, and said he was not a communist. It'll be part of a marathon this weekend right here on NBC News Now. Catch that special episode and the marathon starting at 8 a.m. on Saturday and 10 a.m. on Sunday. And we'll be right back with some of the least talked about, but perhaps most important races taking place on Tuesday. Welcome back. It is not just control of Congress and a bunch of governors' mansions up for grabs in 4 days. Voters will also decide hundreds of seats in state legislatures. And with them, the potential to swing the balance of power on issues of local, national, and even presidential importance. Because guess what? The Supreme Court's docket in the fall includes a case out of North Carolina, which, depending on how this conservative court rules in June, could give state legislatures, and whichever party controls them, extraordinary power over federal elections heading into 2024, essentially eliminating the state judiciary. So to break down which races to watch, I'm joined by Reid Wilson. He's editor-in-chief of the terrific new publication called Plurbius News. Reid, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Wave years are disastrous for the party that loses when it comes to state legislatures. Are Democrats facing another 2010?
No, they're not, because we're still feeling the reverberations of 2010. I mean, we forget just how many state legislative seats the Democrats lost in 2010, and they never made up those gains.
Never got them back.
It's taken 12 years, and there are still Republicans still hold about 2/3 of the state legislative chambers across the country. Redistricting that impacts the congressional level, we all know about it. We all talk about it. It's magnified at the state legislative level. So there are fewer competitive seats than there have ever been before. Right. So no, Democrats aren't going to lose a lot of seats because there aren't a lot of seats to lose.
All right, let's break it down. You identified, let's put our map back up there. You identified essentially, I think it's 9 states that have chambers in play. Yeah. You know, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Look, they all sound familiar.
Right. These are the states we talk about in Senate races, in governor's races, in presidential contests, and in state legislative chambers. In all 4 of those states, Republicans hold control of both chambers of the state legislature. And although there are opportunities for Democrats to pick them up, in part because Democrats have some really strong gubernatorial candidates, especially in Michigan and Pennsylvania.
I was just going to say.
Coattails are a thing.
Are they a thing? Well, everybody's wondering if there's going to be coattails for Fetterman. All right. What does Shapiro coattails and Whitmer coattails mean for the state
so
ledge?
if Whitmer is running far enough ahead of Tudor Dixon that Democrats suddenly think that they've got a shot at winning back legislative chambers in Michigan for the first time in a very long time. In Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro running so far ahead of Doug Mastriano that Democrats think the same thing. And I'll tell you, at the beginning of the cycle, we weren't really talking about Pennsylvania as a hot topic because Republicans had a sufficient majority. Now it looks like it's at least in play. Let me be clear. I think Republicans are still, by far, they have a strong opportunity to keep both those chambers, but Democrats have a shot. They might not have had a shot had somebody other than Doug Mastriano been the nominee.
All right. I want to single out 3 states in different ways. Nevada is a state that I think Democrats had full control of. Yeah. And is this one of those that we could see the whole thing flip the other way?
Yes, and we saw the whole thing flip the other way a couple of cycles ago. And again, I mean, Nevada is a very closely divided state. Democrats have a small majority now. Republicans had a small majority a couple of years ago.
This is something this could be a decade-long boomerang.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Wisconsin, it's not in play. Yeah. But a supermajority is in play.
That's true.
Is there a scenario where Evers wins and Republicans get a supermajority?
Yes, there is. And when I talk about redistricting at the federal level, Wisconsin is that issue magnified. I mean, there is no way, and forget gerrymandering for a second. There's simply no way to draw these districts that allocate seats in a way that reflects the overall state population. In Wisconsin, Republicans win by a small margin on a statewide level, but there are basically 2-to-1 Republican seats because you can't draw Milwaukee any other way.
How about Arizona?
Arizona is a state where the state Senate is close and could potentially
It's
flip.
probably sitting on the. Okay.
There were some opportunities that Democrats missed in primaries earlier this year where the right candidate didn't get through. They didn't field candidates in a couple of seats. There were some early rumblings that Arizona Democrats effectively left control of the chamber on the table.
Democrats have been criticized in the past for not putting enough focus on this. Do they deserve the criticism this time, or have they gotten their act together?
No, the Democrats have spent a lot more money than Republicans in a lot of these states. We're seeing some outside groups called things like the States Project, Forward Majority, putting forward a lot more money than the traditional Democratic group, the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. But hey, these races that used to cost $100,000 suddenly cost $1 million.
Give me Plurbius News in 10 seconds.
All right. What happens in California or Texas or Florida today is happening in 25 states next year. We're going to spot the trends and tell you where the good things or bad things are coming in those states.
This is smart reporting on state legislatures that impact all of our lives. Congrats on that, Reid Wilson, and thank you. We'll be back Monday with more Meet the Press Now. If it's Sunday, it's the 75th anniversary of Meet the Press on your local NBC News station. Don't miss it. NBC News Now coverage continues with my friend Allie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.